Hi everyone, this is Brittany Atwell. I have chosen to do my final video project on creativity and mental illness. Having worked in the mental health field, I've gotten to see firsthand how talented people with mental illnesses can be. So this project was fun for me, and I hope you all enjoy the video. Mental illness among artists is becoming an increasingly discussed topic. From 1850s painters to 2017 musicians, mental illness has impacted the creative world. What many wonder is if there is a correlation between the two topics. Does living with a mental illness make a person more creative, or does being exceptionally creative make a person more prone to developing a mental illness? What if they are both true? On another note, art can be found in treatment modalities for mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety. Various studies continue to surface regarding this topic, but with the brain being such a complex organ, we may never fully understand the connection between mental illness and artistic capabilities. Being one of the first to discover the extraordinary power of visual statements by psychotic artists in the latter half of the 19th century, Paul Klee recommended that the work of psychotic artists be taken seriously, more seriously than all the public galleries when it comes to performing today's art. John McGregor has an array of training in psychology and psychoanalysis as well as experience in art. He described art made by the mentally ill as being an evolution in attitude as well as having a significant influence on the development of modern art as a whole. Richard Dadd was a popular painter who lived from 1817 to 1886 and was believed to have suffered from schizophrenia. His symptoms started in 1842 when he went on an expedition through Europe to Greece, Turkey, southern Syria, and ending in Egypt with former Newport Mayor Sir Thomas Phillips. 5 months into the trip, Dadd became violent, delusional, and believed to be under the influence of Egyptian god Osiris. Phillips thought Dadd had suffered from sunstroke, causing all of his odd behavior, but upon his return home it was determined that he was of unsound mind. Dadd's family took him to the countryside to recuperate, but he became increasingly worse. He believed his father was the devil in disguise and stabbed him to death, then fled to France. He was arrested after attempting to murder a tourist and was committed to Bethlehem Psychiatric Hospital. Here he was encouraged to continue painting, and he then went on to create many more masterpieces. Many of his paintings were noted as having characters with fixed, peculiar, unfocused stares, similar to those exhibited by people with severe mental illnesses. 3 of Dadd's siblings were noted to have suffered from mental illness as well. The first piece I chose by Richard Dadd is Come Unto These Yellow Stands, done in 1842. It's oil on canvas and features fairies who are dancing and flying around an arch on the beach. This scene was inspired by Ariel's song in Act 1, Scene 2 of Shakespeare's The Tempest. According to Patricia Aldridge, Dadd was always intrigued by fantasy and otherworldly objects. Later in his career, when it was hard to tell the lucid moments from the mad in his creations, his fantasy seemed to resemble that of Shakespeare's, to whom he repeatedly returned for his subjects. Fairy painting was a way of looking at the imaginary creations in order to cast light on our real world. The second piece I chose, done by Richard Dadd, is The Child's Problem, which he created in 1857 and is watercolor and graphite on paper. The title of this piece is a play on a chessboard position, and which is seen as being simple enough to have been set by a child. The picture on the wall signifies Dadd's family's support of the anti-slavery movement. The colors in this picture are very dull, with the boy's purple shirt being the only bright pop of color. The adult appears to be ill or sleeping, and the child has a sense of terror in his eyes. This is a prime example of Dadd's characters having empty, unfocused stares. Adolf Wolfli was an artist who lived from 1864 to 1930, who also suffered from schizophrenia. After a rough early life with an alcoholic father and suffering from physical and sexual abuse to becoming an orphan at the age of 10, Wolfli grew up in a state-run foster homes. As a young adult, he had multiple charges of attempted child molestation. At the age of 29, he was committed to the Waldau Clinic, a psychiatric hospital where he spent the rest of his life. He was very disturbed and violent upon admission, suffering from psychosis and hallucinations. He was finally diagnosed with schizophrenia. It wasn't until 1904, 9 years after his admission, that he began drawing. His doctor, Walter Morgenthaler, took an interest to Wolfley and his art related to his condition. He published A Psychiatric Patient as Artist in 1921, which revealed Wolfley's drawings to the world, gaining him public recognition. The first piece done by Adolf Wolfley is London North, which he drew in 1911, and it is colored pencil on newsprint. This piece seems to be distorted, alien-like figures, crosses, and incoherent writing. In the bottom left corner seems to be a dark figure falling. There are multiple heads throughout the drawing, which could possibly be a reflection of his illness, where he may see or hear multiple people. The left portion of this drawing is not as uniformed as the right, and seems to show a distorted view of whatever Wolfley is trying to show us. The second piece done by Adolf Wolfley is Crucifixion of Jesus Christ, which he drew in 1917, and it is oil crayon on newsprint. There is a childlike quality to this drawing. It is supposed to depict Jesus Christ on the cross, but the person has very long legs and arms with unrealistic hands and a face with a mask. The face of Jesus is shown 3 more times, all of which the eyes are looking to the side and not straight forward. Again, there are crosses throughout the drawing and more incoherent writing. A large number of studies over the past few decades support a link between creativity and mental illnesses, particularly manic depressive disorders and schizophrenia. Although the support is tentative, it forces us to re-examine our attitudes towards the mental states that we call diseased, and when treatment is appropriate. If mental illness can produce powerful and important art, then perhaps instead of trying to eliminate them, we should embrace these illnesses as valuable in their own right. Said by Adrian Sussman. The link between creativity and mental illness dates back to the 4th century BC, which prompted Plato's dialogue, the Phaedrus. Madness, provided it comes as the gift of heaven, is the channel by which we receive the greatest blessings. Madness comes from God, whereas sober sense is merely human. Lord Byron expressed this self-created cult of the tortured artist. We of the craft are all crazy. Some are affected by gaiety, others by melancholy, but all are more or less touched. His statement declaring serious artists needed to be touched even caused some artists to mimic madness or eccentricity in order to be more respected for their work. A 1987 study by Dr. Nancy Anderson of the University of Iowa, using a control group with people of similar intelligence levels, found creative writers had significantly higher levels of bipolar disorder. First-degree relatives were also found to be more likely to be creative and predisposed to mental illnesses, implying the 2 traits are genetically linked. Dr. Arnold Ludwig, professor of psychiatry at the University of Kentucky, examined the lives of eminent individuals, meaning having had a biography written about them and reviewed in the New York Times. This test confirmed a higher prevalence of mental illness in these individuals involved in creative pursuits than those in other professions. Biological support invokes the frontal lobe of the brain, the main connection between the temporal and parietal lobes, where knowledge and concepts are stored. Unusual activity in the frontal lobe, especially in the prefrontal cortex, is characteristic of schizophrenia and manic depressive disorders. Hyperactivity, seen during manic episodes, can cause a person to draw unusual connections between seemingly unrelated topics. Traits of creativity are not only descriptively similar to some of the side effects of mental illness, the neurological brain states are identical. Scientists like Prentke feel that creativity and mental illness are only indirectly related, so treatment for such illnesses will not affect the creative attributes of artists. Edvard Munch stated, "My troubles are part of me and my art. They are indistinguishable from me, and it, meaning treatment, would destroy my art. I want to keep those sufferings." This is powerful, as he is admitting to suffering but feels like treatment would affect his artistic abilities, so he would rather live with his illness than lose his abilities. Medications such as lithium are often seen as a choice treatment for manic depressive disorders, but side effects are reported as making life feel slow, flat, and colorless. Common clinical side effects are lethargy, flat affect, increased cloudiness, hand tremors, memory loss, and lack of coordination. Many of these would greatly affect an artist's quality of work. These medications are geared toward treating the manic periods, which is when a person has the most energy, motivation, and inspiration of thoughts to do things like creative artworks. I personally believe that there is a correlation between mental illness and creativity. While there may not be concrete proof, the results of these studies performed all point in favor of this argument. The prevalence of illnesses found in artists, poets, writers, musicians, and more is evident. They definitely face a double-edged sword. Either live with their mental illness or risk losing their artistic abilities to the treatments available to them. This is a list of artists who were either institutionalized or committed suicide.